All right. Perfect, guys. We are about to get started. Got a bunch of people pouring in. Welcome. All right. Let's get Simon going here. Welcome, everyone. We'll get started and kicked off in any moment here. So welcome for those who are joining. Really happy to see some familiar faces and everyone else who is jumping into the call today. Perfect. There we go. The legend himself, Simon, is here, guys. We will kick things off in a moment. Can everyone hear me okay? Can you hear me over
All
there too?
good.
So, okay, perfect.
Yeah, I got you.
Perfect. There we go. All right. Barmore, Greg, awesome. There we go. Awesome, guys. We will kick things off in just a moment. We have a very exciting training uh, prepared for us today. So we'll get going in just one moment. Let some other people get into the call today. Okay. All right. Okay, guys. Well, we can just go ahead and kick things off so we can make sure we have the whole hour to get into everything today. So, for those of you joining for the first time, we do these calls every other Thursday with top 1% media buyers through our partnership with MediaBuyer.com. And we get to hear and learn from people who have, a really extensive portfolio of paid ads, basically, essentially, and all the different strategies they see. So, we'll for the next hour for you guys. Again, if it's your first time or you're coming back, any questions that you might have the entire call, just throw into the chat. Any engagement that we can get through today's session is always makes for a better call, so we can help you, and that's what myself and primarily Simon are here for. So without further ado, again, these calls are recorded. I always mention this each call, so they are put in the chat. If you want to go into the Facebook group or the school community, you can get all these calls and all the training from past calls. But today we have Simon back again. So he's going to be covering some Black Friday, Cyber Monday type strategies from the e-commerce perspective. He's generated and spent collectively 100 to 150 million plus. So he definitely knows his stuff. So guys, welcome Simon. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to sit and hang out and enjoy the training. But yeah, if you have any questions about ads or your funnels or Black Friday strategies, just throw them in the chat and we'll handle them as we go. So welcome Simon. We're happy to have you here.
Oh, awesome. Thank you very much, Vincent. Good to be back. Good to see some familiar names in the chat there too. So today is primarily, I won't say all about, but primarily about Black Friday, Cyber Monday 2025. And that is fast approaching. It is in the media buying world, I would say the busiest weekend of the year. Sometimes the most stressful, depends how things are going. And you might feel that something like that too when you've got your own campaigns running. But it's always super interesting. It's just go, go, go. So we're going to talk through that today. I'm going to share some of my experience around Black Friday, some top tips that I have for Black Friday on the years of running campaigns, what that looks like. But one of the kind of the things I thought would be cool to do was to, if you want, do some kind of live feedback on what you're thinking for Black Friday as well. So if you would like to, over the next couple of minutes, feel free to put in the chat or the Q&A section there, just an answer to those kind of 4 quick prompts there. And then later on in the call, I'll work through those and we can kind of have a quick chat about what that looks like for your brand and some just initial top line feedback. If you'd like to take that opportunity, all I need to know is just the product or the product category would be fine. What your usual AOV is without when you're not running a sale, maybe what it's been for the past 30 days, for example. Then I'd love to know what your Black Friday, Cyber Monday offer is, either as a percentage off, bundling, discounting, whatever that looks like. And then also how important Black Friday, Cyber Monday is in the context of your business. And feel free to answer that a little bit however you like, maybe as a percentage of revenue for the year, or it might be give it a score of 1 to 10, 10 being really important, 1 being not so important. It always just helps me contextualize feedback when I understand how important it is to your business. There are some brands I know that they will do over 50% of their revenue on this particular period. And so obviously the success of Black Friday, Cyber Monday is incredibly important to them. Other brands, it might be a much lower percentage of your overall revenue, but it is always interesting to understand that piece of the puzzle too. So if you'd like to take a moment over the next kind of few minutes or so to kind of pop that in, and later on in the call we will get to that, and I'll be able to give you some feedback as we go. And of course, any other questions as we go, always put them in the chat, and I'll be able to cover them too. All right, so thought I'd run you through some quick stats that matter and why they are important to you as potential Black Friday advertisers. The first one's interesting. This probably doesn't differ too much from general day-to-day e-com sales, but 76% of Black Friday purchases are made on mobile. So that's specific to Black Friday. Now, interestingly, on Cyber Monday, there's a 20% uptick in people converting on desktop. Maybe that's to do with the nature of the sales, Cyber Monday being more technical based, more information is required, whereas Black Friday is separate to that with just general products. Really, it probably just highlights, which is something that we should all know already, the importance of the mobile experience for the user. It is just critical that when a user goes to your landing page, product page, website in general, that it is designed for mobile first, and that the ability for people to convert is super clean. One of the things that often gets missed, if you like, is like a pop-up or a banner that sits over the call to action button. And I see this all the time. So you land on a product page, you've got a lovely product image, the price, the discount, and then right where the add to cart button is, something's popping up, a cookie banner, some other promo, an email list pop up, something like that, that takes the attention away from what you want or the action you want somebody to be taking. So really think about the user experience on mobile. I would say, particularly for Black Friday, Cyber Monday, the ultimate goal is purchases through the door. That is what we are aiming for. Get rid of the email sign up for the weekend. Just you don't worry about capturing attention in that way, which is more of your long-term strategy. Just get them to perform the action that you want them to perform without anything distracting them around that. Now, the promo window is it's a really interesting one. I work with brands that just do Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and that's the standard. But then I work with a few other brands, and I feel like every year our promo window gets longer and longer and longer. Used to be the week before Black Friday. Last year, quite a few were doing 2 weeks before Black Friday. A couple of brands that are now just doing Black Month, and it's the whole month is a Black Friday sale. You need to play with what works best here. I would say, in my experience, pushing the window out for longer than a week, you see diminishing returns. You lose that effectiveness to really have a punchy message, and you lose that FOMO element in particular, which is kind of so important for Black Friday and for what this traditional sale is all about. But you also don't want to miss the boat either. So you need to find that balance and find that balance that works for you. I have worked with some brands that have just done like an early Black Friday sale, but for a day only. So maybe the first Friday in November, you can do a quick sale and gain some traction, which is actually a really interesting way to do some early testing. So some early testing on creative, some early testing on your product page, and just make sure that everything's nice and clean, a smaller budget, run a small sale, which is your early Black Friday sale. Lots to play with. I'm going to show you an example of another brand in terms of like a structure and what that looks like. So we'll come back to this in a little bit. Look, as we know, Black Friday kind of gets more and more popular every year. I did read some reports at the end of last Black Friday that it wasn't as big as people expected it to be. But there is still kind of an 8% year-over-year increase in the US and 5% worldwide year-on-year increase. So it's still definitely front of mind. Are there diminishing returns for some brands? Probably. There's more players in the market. There's a lot more going on. But there is still a lot of interest in it. The second last point there I thought was really interesting. Now, the average discount across brands in this particular study was 27%. to me, that's not strong enough for a Black Friday offer. That's definitely on the lower side. Now, I know this is an average, and people will obviously be discounting more heavily than that. I'm going to come back to what is an appropriate offer soon, but that was quite interesting. And also that final point, this kind of leads into ad creative a little bit and channels, but 20% of sales came from influence and affiliates over Black Friday, Cyber Monday. So don't discount the importance that that group can play in supporting your brand and the message as well. So we like to talk about how amazing Black Friday is for brands and how much growth it can give them. And I'm not going to call it the dark side of Black Friday, but there is a side that Black Friday is really tricky, and it's not a walk in the park for brands, and not everybody grows, and not everybody sees the return that they want to see. And this is down to a myriad of reasons. Definitely the competition. Like, we know that CPMs will rise significantly, particularly over that weekend, but throughout November and the first half of December. There is a lot of noise and a lot of attention. Some of the big players will spend 50, 60% of their budget just over Q4. So there's a lot of things that are happening in Q4 that means there's a lot of competition out there for brands. One of the things that's interesting about Black Friday and Cyber Monday is the portion of new customers that come through. Now, if you discount heavily and maybe you break even, maybe you take a loss on that first sale because you're trying to get people in the door. What is as equally important as the strategy that you have used to get people in the door is your strategy that you then have to retain them for subsequent sales. There is very little point in bringing in a new customer and taking a loss if you don't have a robust retention strategy in place to make sure that you get your LTV over the subsequent months. So time and time again, I see brands just put all of their attention on this first customer acquisition piece, and then that's awesome. Like, they get that bit right, but they have no retention plan to then make sure that the business is profitable after actually acquiring the customer. So yes, new customer acquisition, that's what the foundation of growing your business. But to make your business sustainable, particularly if you've acquired a customer through heavy discounting, a rock solid retention strategy is just so key. One of the things that I often notice is that if you obtain a customer with a heavily discounted offer, the next sale is quite difficult because they've tied the value of the product or the service to what they have paid for it the first time. And for your second purchase, or for the customer's second purchase, you almost need to realign that concept of value to the same product. Or maybe you cross-sell and you go into a different product or a different category that you also offer. But this is where it gets quite complex. A retention plan is not just, let's send them 20 emails over the next month. Okay. Yes, that could be part of it, but what you communicate, how you communicate, what products you push them to next, the value that you assign to those products to them in their mind will be so critically important to actually getting the subsequent sale. So it does require a lot of testing, a lot of thinking. If you can push them into other products, that is a little bit easier because they're now assigning a value to a different product. And so you can make that realignment a little bit easier. But if you're a one product store, you need to find a way to align that value again. So if you've offered 40% off on Black Friday, you can't go to full price the next time you ask them for money for that same product because they will not pay it. You need to edge them up. Maybe it's 25% off for the second purchase. And you're just recalibrating that perception of value in the customer's mind. But look, I could talk about that for ages. I probably need to move on, but it is just such a really important piece that a lot of people miss. And the other bit that's not all glory, obviously there's just business constraints, right? Inflation, supply chain constraints. And I've just spoken about how heavy discounting can lead to further challenges. So while we like to talk about all the good things, don't forget about the hard work behind the scenes that you need to do to make Black Friday successful as well. Alrighty, so specifically on some media buying tips, and there's lots of ways to cut it when it comes to setting up your Black Friday campaigns. There's nuances to it. There's things that will be really successful and there's things that won't be. The number one tip though is to just be really strict on the performance of the campaigns. When we talk about campaigns generally in the media buying world, particularly if you're running through your own product or website rather than like an affiliate setup, we talk about multiple touch points, warming people up, journeys, and all those lovely, warm, fluffy things that we want people to do as they become educated about a product. Black Friday is as one touch purchase as we can ever make it, right? It's top line sale, super compelling, make the purchase. All right. So if you have an ad or a campaign that's spending and not performing, then it needs to be cut or changed. This is the kind of the period where you can be as ruthless as possible within the ad setup that you've got. One of the things that I do find works quite well is running some pre-launch or teaser campaigns. And so warming up that audience to the product and the offer beforehand. And there's a couple of ways to do this. This is just I'll call it a sample structure that I kind of do with a couple of the brands that I work with. Feel free to take a screenshot of this if you'd like to, and it might be a bit small, but hopefully it's not too bad. So this hype period, this is on about a 60K investment roughly for Black Friday media spend. So I thought that might be slightly average to maybe where some people sit in this group. So this is about 60K on Black Friday, Cyber Monday. We've got about 2, 4, 6, about 7 of that is in just hype advertising, and then the rest into conversion-based activity. Now, if you wanted to follow a structure like this, there's a few kind of nuances to it which are interesting. So top of funnel running like Advantage Plus, or it doesn't matter too much, or a CBO campaign. These are on Advantage Plus and CBO for the top 2. When you run your hype campaigns in this setup, the recommendation here is to use the sales objective, but to run like very top of funnel type content within this campaign. But then when you get to like launching and sale live campaigns, this brand just launched their Black Friday a couple of days early softly, and then went into Black Friday heavily. So that's why you see like a bit of a low spend here and then into Black Friday with the heavier spend. But you run all of your ads within this one campaign. So you do your hype and you do your launch and then you do your big scale all in the one campaign. And the idea there is that Meta will, for people that expressed interest in any way, watched the video, clicked a button from your hype campaigns, as you launch more ads within that campaign, Meta will naturally show that to people that have shown some interest in the ads that you're running previously. And so that gives you a nice little head start within that campaign structure to get Black Friday moving. It also gives you the chance just ever so slightly to warm up those campaigns before Black Friday as well. One of the really tricky things is if you're running your Black Friday campaigns and you're pushing go at 6 a.m. on Black Friday with a 5K spend, a 10K spend in a campaign that has zero history, it's just I'm not going to say a recipe for disaster. It just leaves it very open for the algorithm gods to potentially not give you the love that you probably want or deserve. By having just a bit of a small spend in the few days before, it just gets that baseline out of the way and gets some momentum happening in there. Not foolproof by any means, but it definitely can help. And there's just different things in here. So Advantage Plus, no targeting, CBO, just with some stats targeting in there, lookalikes, interest that work, those sorts of things that layering can really help as well. And then this second one here was more just a different style of ad. So any ad over the past 90 days, which has been a successful ad, is just reproduced with Black Friday bannering around it. So exactly the same, nothing different. We just know it's a good converting ad. So we're just going to stick Black Friday on it and then stick it in a campaign. And that would be one of my probably number one creative tip. I'm going to talk about creative in more detail a little bit later on. But like if you've got creative that works and it's been converting for you, just stick a Black Friday banner on it and stick it back in the account over that period. Like it's just the easiest solution to what some people probably overcomplicate a little bit in terms of the Black Friday setup. So I would definitely recommend that. In terms of middle of funnel and bottom of funnel, there's not too much that is interesting other than they're just different audience setups. And this depends on the data that you have, the history of the account, and if you're setting up your campaigns more for first customer acquisition or for returning customers. And that's just more a split on how you want to play that out. I like to split it a little bit so I can see how much I'm spending and getting from previous customers versus new customer acquisition, because it's just how I like to know that I'm acquiring customers at a different CPA or a different return on ad spend, and how much spend I'm allocating to those customers. It depends on what your strategy is for Black Friday. If you're rewarding past customers with a good discount, great. A lot of brands say, well, I'm going to do that through email. Email inboxes are the busiest on Black Friday compared to any other day of the year. The myriad of stuff that gets, sent on that day is incredible. So there's no guarantee that a Black Friday email will ever be opened, particularly amongst all the other stuff that they're getting at the same time. So just coming back to, so that was the kind of the pre-launch teaser setup. So I'll just come back to this. Look, in terms of budgets, play around with this. Most of your spend really should be on Black Friday. That is the highest converting day, unless you've got a tech-based product, and then it's a little bit more skewed towards Cyber Monday. Drop your spend a little bit more over these 2 days because the intent has dropped a little bit. And then for your Cyber Monday, really play that one by ear. You can kind of just go for it because there will be an element of FOMO, people missing out. And if you've got some good traction over these couple of days here, then you might, have the capacity to spend more if you've seen that traction play out. So that's kind of a one setup recommendation. There's lots of other ways to go about it too. But yeah, just in terms of some other top tips. So obviously aggressive scaling on high performers. That kind of makes sense. That probably doesn't need too much more explanation. Creative rotation and refresh is an interesting one. Ideally, you always want to leave your best ads on, and particularly if they're getting social proof and comments of people saying this is a great offer, we leave them on. As you get towards kind of Cyber Monday, it's generally a good idea to put some more relevant ads into the mix. So final day, last day of the sale, that kind of thing. But have good of ads in your arsenal. One or two ads doesn't cut it. Depending on your spend, if you're in that kind of 50K range roughly for that period, 20, 30, 40 ads is where I'd be pitching for most brands. And same rules apply. Creative diversity is kind of super key. Videos, images, affiliate, UGC, all that kind of stuff. The same mix is important. What I would say is that image ads have a greater role to play on Black Friday because they're easily digestible. When there's a lot of Black Friday content going out, you can see the offer and hopefully you can see the product. Come back to that in a sec. So yeah, image ads play a really big role. There are people that will just be scrolling for deals, looking for the deal that's right for them, for the product that's right for them. So we need to make decision-making really quick and easy for people. Don't overcomplicate things would be my number one tip. And then finally, obviously we're in a HiROS call, and I would assume you're all using HiROS anyway. But this is where kind of this cross-channel tracking and attribution becomes really, really important. Like, how can you understand the channel that is actually driving the performance? As we know, individual ad channels will take all of the credit they possibly can, and that's the nature of them. That's how they work. When you go into HiROS and you can see actually where your sales are coming from, you know exactly where you can allocate your spend, increase spend, decrease spend. So sometimes in the mix of getting everything set up and all of the stuff for Black Friday, just so important, make sure you've got your HiROS UTM set up properly, and just that, really housekeeping stuff, but don't let that get lost in the mix of all the other things that you're doing for Black Friday. Come back to the source of attribution, or the source of what's actually happening in your ad accounts, that gives you that real-time data. It's just, that's super important on what is some people's kind of most important weekend of the year in terms of the business context. All right. Might be a good time to do some questions if there are any, Vincent, do
Yeah,
you think?
yeah,
And then
we have a
can,
handful there, and
or we can
great
come
stuff so
back to
far,
that.
Simon. I think this is really good. You can hear me right, Simon, over there?
Yeah, yeah, gotcha. Yeah.
Okay, cool, perfect. Yeah. So just real quick, guys, like we always do here, if you guys are enjoying the training, and just to make sure again that you're not a AI robot over there, just throw some ones in the chat if you're enjoying this content so far, and show Simon some love, guys. Perfect. There we go. All right. So we do have some questions. So we'll start from the top here. Great. Seeing a lot more ones there, guys. Really happy to see so many familiar faces back. Okay, so Sterling just initially kind of asked, Sterling White asked Simon, his personal ads account got restricted. He can't contact support. Tried using a relative's account, making new Facebook accounts, but nothing worked. He just wanted to know if you have any like suggestions. He mentioned Exascale, or if there's any other better alternatives for Facebook ad accounts. So maybe some insight there would be helpful.
Yeah, look, tricky one. I guess it depends on the reason that the ad account has been restricted. If it's your personal one, it makes me feel like it's not necessarily based on your website. If an ad account gets restricted because Meta doesn't like the website, that's a really like tricky one to try and solve. Um, yeah, I mean, without promoting anything kind of shady, to be honest, it's kind of is probably going down the path of finding someone that has an ad account that you can use. I think there are ways that I don't know of to buy ad accounts, but I don't think that's necessarily kosher necessarily. But there are opportunities out there to do something like that. So it's very tricky. I haven't used Exascale. I don't know them, so I couldn't really recommend or not recommend them. I guess the other option would be to potentially run through an agency, and they can set up ad accounts under their agency profile, and run that way. But yeah, probably not a great answer to that one, but hope that helps a little bit. And what's your 80-20 rule for scaling Facebook ads? Look, my rule is pretty simple. It's 80% on growth, 20% on testing. Depends on the brand. New brands obviously need to spend a little bit more on that. I am not a big believer with the way that Meta works at the moment in terms of audience testing. I'm pretty firmly in the camp that 9 times out of 10, creative is your target. If you get your creative right and your messaging right, Meta will find the audience and the right audience for you in a way that is scalable. Do I have success with selecting audiences? Yes, but I find them to be a lot less scalable. So that's kind of just where I sit in that bucket. But yes, but I think Vincent might be able to help you with point number 1 on that one. Anyway, yeah, cool. I hope that helps with that one.
Yeah, then there's another one from Wasil or Wasil. Hopefully got close there. But they were asking, yeah, good question here. So how far ahead should you set up a Black Friday, Cyber Monday campaign?
Yeah, cool. I mean, that kind of feeds back into this structure here, which I was mentioning before. I think it's really important to give your campaigns like a couple of days headway, just to get going. A, to build up some traction. B, also just to make sure that you're not going to have like any issues with the campaign. So let's say you set up a campaign and your ads get rejected because there's an issue with the landing page. Like it would be really good to work that out ahead of time. So anything that you can do to set that up and get that live and get that running to like a pre-offer, then that would be my recommendation. At least a couple of days beforehand. Maybe you run it to a URL and you could do an email capture or something, be notified as soon as your software goes live, or a pre-launch or something like that. But yeah, I'd give yourselves a couple of days headway with the campaigns running, and that's as a risk stopping measure there.
Okay, and a few more yet here before we continue on, guys. And again, if anyone's hanging out there and just has any question, whatever that might be, whether it's ads related or business focused, feel free to just throw those in, and we'll get to those. So Daniel just needed some clarification from you, Simon. So he said he doesn't think Advantage Plus are available anymore. So when he's asking, do you run CBO with one ad set and, for example, 15 to 20 ads then? Is that what you mean by when you say Advantage Plus?
Yeah, sorry. naming, just left it there from Advantage Plus probably from last year. So ASC campaign in this context, or a CBO with just one ad set. I mean, to be honest, they all operate in very much the same way. So I don't think it probably matters too much on the setup there. But yes, look, the way that Andromeda works, which is the meta algorithm that they're running at the moment, is basically full funnel campaigns. Can do it within the one ad set. That's generally the recommendation. So yeah, that is your 15 to 20 ads, one campaign, one ad set, full funnel approach, and let Meta go to work.
Perfect. And let's see here. So good question here from Sterling as well. So what trends are you seeing where advertisers are pivoting their strategies the most? So kind of like an open floor question, but are you seeing them move towards like founder ads, leaving targeting broad, adding all ads to a single ad set under a single campaign, or anything else you're seeing just trend wise where people are pivoting?
I mean, to be honest, all three of those are pretty hot topics right now and have been for about a little while. I mean, founder ads for ecom are just so powerful. I mean, with almost every brand I work with, that's the first thing I ask for. I was like, right, what founder ads are we doing? What's the story? Tell me the story behind the brand. Tell me the why you exist, why you set up, what problem are you solving? And I want to hear it from you. Because people buy into more than the product. They buy into the person, they buy into the story, all of that kind of stuff. So like founder ads are just, I was just thinking like, couple of my ad accounts, it's pretty much all we run in video format is just different stories from the founder with different messaging. So it's definitely one of the most powerful pieces of content. I much prefer founder ads to like UGC or any other kind of or affiliate content. There's always a place for affiliate and UGC, yes, but founder ads are definitely kind of like the number one. Leaving targeting broad is also, I mean, I just kind of said that before previously as well. Like that's definitely my go-to, and that's what's more scalable. How I set up my campaigns differs from ad account to ad account. I really look for the nuances in an ad account in how it works. I would love one structure to work everywhere. And I actually think we're probably getting closer to that than we've ever been, which makes life a bit easier for a media buyer. But, just because there's a best practice setup, if it doesn't work for a brand and I see another setup working, then I'm always going to go with the setup that works. But one of the things I've noticed recently, in particular, maybe over the past month, is that when I launch ads in a testing campaign, and so that might be testing at the ad set level, and then usually broken down into themes or testing something in particular, find a winner, and you put that winner into your scaling campaign, and it gets no love. And I'm finding more and more if I actually just test within growth and do that in a way that's methodical without resetting the learning, trying not to, which is sometimes tricky, those ads seem to perform a lot better. It just seems to be whenever you move an ad from testing to growth, it just doesn't have the same impact. So it's a really interesting little nuance that I think I'm testing in a few accounts what the right setup is now, because that breaking down in testing into themes is definitely probably still considered best practice, and still really important. But if you can't move those ads into like a growth or a scaling campaign, that can become a little bit tricky to manage. Now, when I test a campaign and I test with an ABO budget setup, so I do still always scale in place. I mean, if an ad is working in testing, then scale in place and keep increasing that budget. And so in most of my accounts, what's called my testing campaign, well, it's always a testing/growth campaign, will spend more than what some of my scaling campaigns are spending, just because I'm always scaling in place where that bit of creative was initially tested. So so I think that's probably still something I'm playing around with in a few accounts to work out what that ideal setup is at the moment.
Really great response there, Simon. And a few more here that we'll work through, guys. Let's see. Perfect. So what are your thoughts? I think this was asked last week or a couple weeks ago for Antonio as well, potentially. Glenn, good to see you, man. Welcome back. What are your thoughts on sending straight to a checkout page instead of a landing page?
That's such a good question. I've tested this a lot over the years, and very rarely has the checkout page won over a landing page. And I think a lot of that just comes down to trust in the process. It's an unusual step for a customer to take to go from clicking on ad to go straight to checkout page. So that I think creates a block potentially. Obviously, someone needs to be educated about the product, right? It probably needs to be a lower value product because they will check out quickly without educating themselves more about the product benefits, etc. But yeah, every time I've tested it, it hasn't delivered, or very rarely has it delivered a better result than going to a landing page first. I'd be really interested to hear though, Glenn, if you ever have a different experience with it, because it is a really interesting idea, but not something I've personally been able to crack.
Okay, and then one from Peyton. Peyton, good to see you back as well. I love seeing you guys come back and ask these kinds of questions. So he said, outside the hype campaigns, what are some ways to build up the funnel in preparation for BFCM? We are running a giveaway in hopes to increase subscriber count ahead of the sale. Curious if there are any other strategies you would recommend.
Yeah, really good question. And really, you could say Black Friday advertising starts now, or at the very least starts in October. From like an ad account perspective, one strategy would be to start to like allocate more spend to top of funnel activity. So that would be like video views, awareness. I'm not going to say traffic because I'm just not a fan of that campaign type. But video views and awareness with like really strong brand messaging, stories that engage people, that don't sell, but make people brand aware. Now, the reason I say video views and awareness is rather than driving people to a website for this type of setup is that Meta will retain all of that data rather than losing some of that in the transition to like a third-party source like your website. And so by way of that, you can create really good audiences based on interactions on Meta. So people that watch 75% of the videos, people that have commented, liked, shared. And if you've got a decent enough spend to create quite big audiences based off that interaction on Meta, TikTok, wherever it might be, then that's a really nice way to kind of build that initial upper funnel like customer number in there. So that would be kind of number one, but it doesn't give you the power of the data, like in the similar way to like an email would, for example. If kind of email capture and that side is important, then I mean, it sounds like what you're doing by like running a giveaway is like a really good way to go about that, kind of building the subscriber list. I think anything that offers somebody the chance to win or get a good discount would be pretty cool as well. So maybe it would be something like some kind of major prize potentially if you leave your email address and it gets announced on Black Friday. Something that's just nice and compelling that would encourage someone to leave their email address. Tricky part is the volume of emails that people will be getting on Black Friday. You can combat that a little bit by adding those email lists into Meta and then retargeting them with an offer. So, and I would recommend everybody does that anyway. Your open rates for Black Friday will not be 100% as much as everyone wants them to be. Maybe the 30% if you've got some really killer emails, or maybe even more. But complementing what your email messaging is with some retargeting to those lists would be super important as well. So I'll have a think about that one. If I think of any more during the call, I'll let you know. But generally, my fallback is trying to retain as much data within Meta or TikTok, and then retargeting those people when it comes to Black Friday. And I think I saw a question, sorry, just quickly about email deliverability. Look, I mean, Klaviyo or Klaviyo, I think as some people call it, is they're kind of the top of the top in terms of email deliverability and popularity, particularly for Shopify brands. So that is generally the one I'd recommend. But email's not really my bucket, so I don't spend a lot of time there, to be honest.
Perfect. And a couple more, and then we can get back to some of the training guys. Also, too, if you again, want to get the recordings, they're going to be in Facebook as well as school community that I shared in there. Or if you ever want to work one-on-one with someone like Simon or another top 1% media buyer, you can send me an email and we'll put you in touch with those correct kind of people for you. So the next question, so we have one from Daniel, then we have like a super mega question from Mimi, but they're very good questions actually. So thank you, Mimi, for being so specific with some of those. So we'll tackle those and then we'll go back into training with the remaining 20 minutes or so we have. So Daniel's first, and then we'll get into some of yours, Mimi. So Daniel asks, should hype campaigns also focus on having selling power or just sharing value for the product? And how do you run them?
So specifically for hype, we're going selling power. So, we want to warm people up that we've got something really exciting about to drop. So now you can be a little bit elusive around this potentially. Something's about to drop or be quite specific. So 60% off is coming. I quite like the idea of being specific because then you either discount people that aren't interested or people stick around and engage with the post or do something like an interaction that qualifies them. So in the hype stage, it's selling power. Before the hype stage, so if we say hype is the 3, 4, 5 days before Black Friday, in that period before, so the first 3 weeks of November, that should be more value storytelling, etc., brand awareness. And then you get into the kind of the selling power of the hype campaign. So look, I'm running personally, I run the hype within the campaign that will be the Black Friday campaign. So I'm retaining those learnings as I move people through that stage of the funnel. Can you do hype like on an awareness objective? 100%. It's hard to track in terms of necessarily will it convert down the line? But there's nothing kind of wrong with allocating some spend to just that very top of funnel in that hype period as well. So yeah, definitely no problems there.
Okay, perfect. So if you had to work through here, Mimi or Simon, with Mimi's question, so
Cool.
launch ads versus hype ads, and I'll let you kind of work through them as well. But basically, when you add launch ads into the existing top of funnel Advantage Plus campaigns, do you usually turn off the hype ads or keep them running at the same time? Since Meta has already been spending on the hype ads, would that affect the budget and how it's allocated towards the launch ads?
Cool. Really, really good question. If the hype ad is converting, I'm leaving it on. If it's not converting, then I'm not leaving it on. The nuance there is if it's converting, but not at the CPA or the return on ad spend that I want, then I'm turning it off and I'm letting Meta then reallocate that spend to other ads in that campaign. Definitely have had the case where a hype ad builds up traction and that becomes the top converting ad. Something you need to be careful with in terms of, is it communicating the right message? And with your hype ads, you can be clear on that too. So I don't know Black Friday is off the top of my head, but actually I'll look it up so I can say. So it must be the 28th. So we can say sales starts 28th of November, and so if somebody sees the hype ad and it's already the 28th or gone past that, they know the sale is live despite it being a hype ad. So probably just something you can do there within the communication of the messaging that also means you can either leave a hype ad on or not.
Okay, and then how many launch ads do you typically add, Simon? And do you worry about it being considered a significant change if you add multiple new ads at once and turn others off?
For Black Friday, no. This is all guns blazing, quick media buying, for looking at results fast. You can kind of, I won't say throw it out the window, but you can kind of throw that out the window a little bit in terms of resetting learning and those sorts of things. It's just one of those times of the years where we be reactive, we launch ads quickly, and we get good volume into the ad account. It depends on your spend, but minimum 10 ads in a campaign is kind of your bare minimum, but you probably be wanting to aim for a bit more than that.
All right, and then 2 more here, then we'll get back to kind of tying together the rest of the training with the time we have here, guys. So would you recommend adding the launch ads into the campaign early just to get them approved, then turning them off until the sale goes live? I've heard that can help get CPMs lower since the ads don't need fresh approval during the sale.
Yeah, so I set everything up in the ad account for the whole weekend. And then at the ad level, it's in a hidden little drop down somewhere. You can schedule your ads to go live at a certain time, which is different to how you do it at the ad set level. You can also do it at the ad level as well. And so that is the setup that I go for there. So yep, they're in the account, they're pre-approved, and they go live 6 a.m., 5 a.m., wherever you are, on Black Friday. So that, I don't know if it impacts CPMs. I haven't necessarily heard that before, but either way, just for your own time management, you can have that kind of pre-selected, pre-set up and ready to go.
And here's what I think should be good for a lot of people, especially if there is anyone out there here listening who does Black Friday sales. So when you scale from like 400 a day to 5,000 a day, so when you make that jump, do you usually make that in one day, or do you think it's better to gradually increase spend leading up to Black Friday to avoid that significant change?
Yeah, really good question. And it depends on the setup that you're going for Black Friday. If you're following a schedule like this, which is like small amount of hype, bit of pre-launch, and then Black Friday is the day, then allocating your 5K on day, whatever it might be, is fine. Like that's kind of the way to go. Obviously, it requires careful management at the time and making sure that you're hitting those goals that you want to be hitting on Black Friday. So yes, in this context, that big jump is okay, but it has to be monitored super closely because you need to check that you get the results that you're looking for. If you're running Black Friday, like the sale the week into Black Friday, then yeah, sure, you can kind of do that more gradually. You can do 1,000 a day, 2,000 a day, and make sure you're finding that traction at each step of the way. And if that's important to you, then the recommendation probably is to launch Black Friday with a week's run-in time into the actual day. But if you're just relying on like just a Black Friday, then something like it's on the screen now is generally an approach. So yeah, no one size fits all, but in the context of Black Friday, again, the rules are out the window. You can do your big budget increases to get the spend level that you want to get to. That's fine.
Okay, hopefully that was helpful, Mimi. I see you're still hanging out, so hopefully those were helpful responses. Perfect. Yeah, super helpful. Amazing. So yeah, about 12, 13 minutes left, guys. So we'll get through a little bit more training with Simon. And we'll make sure that you guys have the recordings and everything there. So if you want to go ahead, Simon. Good stuff.
Sounds good. What I actually don't, just thought of a top tip, which I don't have on here. If you're primarily a Meta advertiser, going into your events and check the real-time data and how quickly data comes into your ad account. Most ad accounts are probably on real-time data. Quite a few, particularly like I tend to find with Shopify, if they're using just the native Shopify app, it's on hourly data. So there's an hour delay with data coming back into the account that you're seeing on the dashboard. So, consider that, the delay. Definitely check Hyros and make sure everything's kind of aligning. But data freshness is something that's probably important to just consider when you're like looking at how the campaigns are going, particularly on Black Friday when the spend is happening so rapidly. So general top tips: urgency is key. Make sure the messaging in the ads is FOMO. This is the deal. It is now. You are not going to see a deal this good again this year. So really kind of want to stress that part. Play big or bow out. 10% doesn't cut it. 15% doesn't cut it. I don't think 20% cuts it, to be honest. Black Friday, people are looking for big deals. They want to feel like they're getting exceptional value. There is no point spending 60K on ads if you're going to offer a 10% discount. It's just kind of not how Black Friday works in my mind. I want to stress this third one as probably the most important one. So simple. Click on ad.
Oh, hey, Simon, real quick. Your connection cut out for just like whatever the nugget was. It cut out for a second. You're good now, but
is it back? Okay.
Yeah, you're good now.
Sorry. Okay. So number 3. So yeah, this is kind of the most important one. And it is, don't make it hard for people to redeem the offer. Okay. Discount codes, having to put 3 different things in the cart to trigger the discount to apply. Like all of that stuff means that people will churn. Every time you make something complex, or you add a step, people drop off. So really clear what the discount is. I just like percentages because I think that works. Monetary off can also work, $20, $30, $50, that's fine. Where I start to have problems is add product A, product B, and product C to your cart, and then I'll give you product D for free. Oh, this is hard now. Hang on, where do I find all those products? Do I have to go to 3 different product pages to trigger this thing? It gets messy. Discount codes are an absolute no-no on Black Friday. Okay, you just get the discount automatically. It is not go to checkout and type Black Friday 2025 to get your discount. You've added a step and now you've lost customers. Okay, every step of someone having to perform a manual action is customers dropping off. So yeah, so I hope that's really clear. That's my number one, probably out of all of these things is just keep it simple. I'm spoken about this a little bit, test everything, test your ad setup, get your campaigns set up, go through the complete buyer journey, buy the product yourself, have some of your staff buy the product on different mobiles, on the website, and make sure that everything works smoothly. As I said before, CTA buttons aren't covered up. The discount applies properly at checkout. If possible, it depends what CMS you're using, but make it really clear that they've got the discount at checkout. So it says like super clearly, like Black Friday discount applied, or a nice big cross out of the price and the sale price. People want to know that once they're in the checkout that the discount has been applied to the process. Because if they're just at the discount and they see the checkout and they see a price and they need to go back to check if they've got the discount, you've added a step. Now they're confused. Now they drop off. So make sure that's nice and clear. Probably a simple one, but just sync all channels on their messaging. Make sure whatever your Black Friday messaging is, it is consistent between email, TikTok, Meta, Google, the whole lot. Consistent messaging is just nice and important there. Alrighty, Black Friday creative. Got a couple of examples here that we can chat through. I can kind of share my thoughts on. Now, I quite like the first one because it's got really good USPs. It's black, which I actually don't know if this is their branding normally, but black as a color signifies Black Friday to a sale shopper. The only thing I don't like about this one is up to 50% off. I've added a layer of confusion already at the ad level. Am I getting 25% off? Maybe I'm only going to get 10% off. What do I have to do to trigger 50% off? Do I have to go and buy 4 of these things to get 50% off? Now I don't want 4 things. I only want 1 thing. Now I've already had to, in my mind, I've just asked myself 4 questions and it's become too hard before I've even left the ad. So again, simple. Just say what the discount is for the product that's been shown on the ad. If it is 25% off because they're only buying 1 of them, then say that. But if they get 50% off for buying 4 of them, then say that. But don't let them have to think and make up their own weird and wonderful thoughts like I do when I look at ads. Now, the second one is I quite like because this is clearer. So 60% off and it has the price. So I know from this ad, I don't even have to click on it, that this is how much it's going to cost me. And it's 60% off. I don't 100% know what the product is though. Is it a toe warmer? Probably not. But it looks a little bit like a toe warmer. Does it take your blood pressure through your toe? Maybe. So I'm not sure. And I put this one here without looking because I generally didn't click on it and I don't know. So I think what they've done a really good job of is making the Black Friday component clear. The offer is clear. And so I know, if I know the brand though, if I don't know the brand and the product, I'm stuck. But if I know the brand and the product, I've got a really clear message here and I can go and buy it. And in theory, the clicks that they get should be quite valuable. And then the third one is kind of, I'm in the middle a little bit on this one. The Black Friday is really clear. I guess they're shorts. I'm going to assume they're shorts for now. Again, it's got an up to 60% off, so I'm not too happy about that. But the free merch is interesting. You're getting a little bonus there. People like free merch. So if there is like a little value add that's not confusing to people, then that's a good little play you can do too. Alrighty, so a couple more I'm going to run through here. So again, this one on the left I quite like. So it is just a straight 50% off plus free gifts. So that's clear. If you're not across what this product is, there's enough education on this product to give you a sense of what's happening. And they've also got the reassurance of $90 money back guarantee. I get the feeling, I don't know, because I don't know the brand. I get the feeling that this is probably one of their top performing ads, and they've just slapped a Black Friday banner on it across the bottom there. That's my impression of something like this, which is a good setup if that's the case, if that's what they've done here. So when I spoke about a little bit earlier about using your best ads and putting a Black Friday banner on it, this is an example. The other approach I really like actually is when the whole border says Black Friday. So use the same image and then in whatever, just orange if you like, just border the whole thing with Black Friday 50% off. I think that probably has a little bit more visual impact. This one here, I probably won't talk about this one for too long. The one in the middle just says up to 40% off. I'm not a huge fan of that, as I've kind of already said. And then this one here is close, but it's not quite there. So Black Friday sale, great, super clear. I've got no idea how much the discount is. Am I getting a 10% or am I getting a 60%? And I've got to click to find out. And on Black Friday, that annoys me a little bit because I'm deal shopping and I'm seeing so many ads. I just want the information really, really fast. What they have done that feels a little bit fake, but they're trying, is the high sellout risk. So they've tried to add the FOMO element here. What I would probably do if it was true is say something like sold out last year in 6 hours. Something like that conveys a proof point around why it's sold out would be quite interesting, I think. But I do like what they've done there in this kind of FOMO element to try and get the sale. So look, I thought I'd share a couple of examples with you why I like them and why I don't like them. And hopefully that kind of just gets the creative juices flowing a little bit in terms of what your Black Friday ads will potentially look like. There's lots of ways to go about it. And just probably the key thing to remember here is there is a lot of ads out there. People are pumping the system with just ad creative, ad creative, ad creative. Standing out has never been harder in this kind of context. So give yourself the time to really think about a strategy that's going to work, an offer that will hit, and a creative setup that means you can be successful. Test everything, test it multiple times. If you're going big, much bigger than you usually do, make sure your website is set up properly. Do I have a slide on that? Maybe not. So yeah, make sure your website is set up, speed test, load testing, super, super important. Get in touch with your provider if you have to make sure that it can handle. Work with brands that, they go on Dragon's Den or Shark Tank, I don't know what's called in the US, and their website crashes because they didn't pre-plan for the amount of traffic they were going to get. Don't fall into that bucket. Clarity is key. Said that. Interestingly, I found that bot and traffic fraud increases by 42% during Black Friday, Cyber Monday. Maybe think about some like ClickCease type protection, ClickGuard. There's a bunch of them out there. If that's something that you want to do, obviously think about inventory and fulfillment. I've definitely worked with brands that just have not been able to keep up with capacity and then get angry customers at the other end. So be really clear around your communication. If you can't make a deadline, just be clear with customers. Just tell them rather than leaving them hanging. And the final one, make sure you've got good staffing over the weekend for your media buying. It is a period where you need someone actively in the accounts. For big spend accounts, they should be checking every hour. For the lower spend accounts, probably every couple of hours. But it's an active management period. It's not turn them on Friday, go and enjoy the weekend and cross your fingers and come back on Monday and hope it's all worked out. It's not the approach for Black Friday, Cyber Monday. So yeah, make sure you've got whatever your setup is, but that's, a good setup over the weekend that can be reactive to what they're seeing in the account. And I think that is
Beautiful.
the Black Friday wrap up.
Wow, right on time, right at the hour here, Simon. That was really, really good. Strategies and tips and responses to the questions. So hopefully everyone who's here got some value out of that. We will post the recordings. Yeah, Wassel said thank you. Yeah, appreciate you guys joining us. If you aren't using Hyros, especially with Black Friday, Cyber Monday coming up, make sure to get plugged in there so you can get real-time data and actually make the decisions that you need to when you're actually scaling these types of ads. Of course, you can go to hyros.com to do that. If you want to work with media buyers like Simon or have one-on-one opportunities with someone like Simon or other top in the world media buyers, you can obviously go to mediabuyer.com, which is our partners that make this possible to have wonderful people like Simon. Otherwise, we'll be here 2 weeks from now, guys, again with another training. But really appreciate you joining us and being customers of Hyros. And Simon, thank you so much for your time. And yeah, we'll see you guys in a couple of weeks. Really appreciate it.
Cool. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you, everyone. All right.
Bye.
Cheers.